I've got a brand new everyday carry, and it is the Sony A7RV. Let's go. Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to Rusty Brown Photography. I'm Rusty, so glad you guys are here. What's up, fam? I haven't been around for a while on YouTube. Good to be back. I hope you guys are doing well. I hope you've had a really good, productive summer and are getting ready for the fall, right? So I got the coach's clipboard today because this is a fairly major announcement for me. As you can see, I got some things I want to get over, a lot to unpack. So let's just get right into it. What I'm going to cover in today's video, right? As I said in the opening, I have a brand new everyday carry. Let me define that first and foremost. So for me, an everyday carry it's like your go bag, right? What you grab for the essentials that you have to have when you go out and you think you're going to have to get some shots somewhere. It's not everything. It's not the type of thing like a lot of us have, big bags where we can throw a ton of gear in there, lenses, multiple bodies, etc. To me, your everyday carry is something that you can carry every day, and you're confident that you can get whatever type of shot you need to get while you're out there. So my new EDC is the Sony A7RV. I'm going to talk about a few things here. Why the need for a new EDC? What were my choices? Pluses and minuses of the new camera that I've found so far. I'm going to talk about my lens choices, what the new role is for my DSLR. As a lot of you guys know, I'm a Sony A99 Mark II SLT DSLR shooter. So what's the new role going to be there now that I'm bringing in the A7RV? What I did with some of my old gear, that's going to be interesting as well. I'm going to talk about the cost. I'm going to break it all down, everything that I paid, so that you have a first-hand understanding of what this entire thing costs me. And within the cost spectrum, I'm looking at a couple of things. What it costs to buy the A7RV, the lenses that I bought, and the process of selling some old gear, right? I'm going to give you some sample shots that I've taken with the A7RV. So to be fair, I've had the camera now about a month. I've taken it around town and got some shots up. Most recently, I went with some friends on our annual golf trip to Myrtle Beach in South Carolina. And the EDC, the new EDC, was the only thing that I took. So I'm going to show you some shots from that trip. I'm also going to talk a little bit about video, but not a lot. I'm going to talk about batteries, memory cards, then I'm going to give you a summary. And if you're still here when you get to the summary, I got a little bonus for you, right? So let's just dive right in. Why do I need a new EDC? Basically, I shot more sports in 2024 than I have in a long time. And I found that subject tracking was difficult. So the A99 Mark II, although old, had some of the, I thought, most groundbreaking technology in it, and a lot of that tech is in today's mirrorless cameras. So I can do auto eye focus, right? I can do facial recognition. I get the green box around the face in the shot. But where I was having difficulty in sports was in subject tracking. In other words, let's think about basketball, right? And if I'm at one end of the court and I'm trying to capture a player who's 94 feet away, I see that he's gotten the rebound and he's coming towards me. So I can lock on him. But the minute another player would cut in front of him, my focus would jump to that person. And then I would have difficulty trying to regain focus on the primary rebounder who I think I was trying to follow in the first place. And you couple that with the speed of the game and the possibility that, you know, the player with the ball is going to make the pass. There's a lot of moving that you have to do with the camera to get the shot. Now, to be fair, I did get some shots, as you can see here, with basketball. I've had some successes there. And then in the springtime, I started shooting college baseball at VCU, Virginia Commonwealth University. Some challenges there too, not nearly as many, because generally if I'm focused on one player, it can be the pitcher, I'm good, the batter, the catcher, even an outfielder, but where the problems would come is if a guy's on first and I'm locked on him and he goes to steal. Catcher makes the throw to second. If the second baseman got in front of the bag to make the catch and then the tag, all of a sudden my focus point would jump to the second baseman, not the guy stealing the base. But I did get some good shots in baseball as well. And then more recently, this fall, I finally got into a little bit of high school football. And it was very challenging. As you can see here, I did get some good images. But I felt like my hit rate, maybe 10%, 12 tops. You know, so even though I did get some good ones, I missed a lot. And that was another case where I'd be focused on a running back and I knew the sweep is coming towards me. Mind you, I'm at field level, I'm on the corner, I'm all set. I got my 70-200, I'm locked on. I can see the player's eyes through his face mask and the helmet. As the team starts to pull on this jet sweep, if a pulling guard were to come around and get in front of that back, you know, to do the lead blocking, my focus point would jump to the guard who did the pull. Not necessarily a bad thing, but if my objective was to get the running back come around the corner, I've lost focus on that. So primarily the why of me getting into looking into a newer camera was because I was just losing focus too much in live action sports. Now, having said that, using the old 70-200 and the DSLR for moving subjects that aren't sports, no challenges whatsoever. If you look at a couple of these shots, you know, at DCA, at Reagan National Airport, of some planes coming in. Same situation, same camera, right? Same lens, but because of how big the airplane is and the relative speed to my position of the plane coming in towards me to land, I could lock on it and nothing was going to get between me and the plane, so consequently, I was good to go. What considerations, what cameras did I have under consideration? And there were three. I had the Sony A4, the Sony A1, and the Sony A7RV. Those are the three cameras. Let's talk about some findings, right? Both the A7 IV and the A7R5 have faster buffers than the A1. So you can get up to 583 RAW on the first two, and on the A1 it's right around 500. But then again, in each case, that's assuming you're using a CF Express card, and I'm not doing that. Subject detection was good on the A7 IV, better on the A1, best on the A7R5. And I'll give you an example of that a little later, but I mean noticeably better. The A7R5 has the best IBIS, or in-body image stabilization. You get a full 8 stops of IBIS, whereas both the other two cameras were about 5, maybe 5.5 stops. Of the three, only the A7R5 comes with a anti-dust sensor, which is pretty important. Yeah, you know, that was a knock against a lot of the Sony mirrorless cameras actually over the years, because you know, you changing lenses, dust will get in there, and it became a real problem. The EVF, the electronic viewfinder, on the A7 IV is low, 3.6 million dots in the EVF. On the A1 and the A7R5, it's 9.44 million dots in the EVF. Looking through that thing is incredible. It's incredible. The EVF on the A7R5 and the A1 is 0.64 inches. It's smaller, 0.5 inches on the A7 IV. Let's talk about the rear display a little bit. The rear display on the A7R5 is bigger and brighter than the other two. Specifically, the A7R5 is 3.2 inches. I'm talking about the screen on the back of the camera, right? It's 3.2 inches with 2.1 million dots. Both the other cameras, the A7 IV is 3 inches with only 1 million dots, and the A1 is also 3 inches but 1.4 million dots. Let's talk about shutter actuation. Basically, what the camera manufacturer says is the minimum amount of times you should be able to fire your shutter. Now, if you remember, on my DSLR, the A99 Mark II, that came in at 300,000. that was what you were pretty much guaranteed if you took good care of your camera. All right. So in this case, of the 3 cameras that I was looking at, the A7 IV comes in at $200,000. And that was the first red flag for me, because to be such a new and modern camera, that's coming in lower than the camera that I've had for 8 years. Whereas both the A1 and the A7R5 are giving 500,000 shutter clicks. That's significant, right? So that's 200,000 more than I was already used to, and 300,000 more than the A7 IV. Let's talk about why I chose the A7R5, and I'll show you a little unboxing here, but I do have it right here. This is the guy here, the A7R5. It's smaller than, you know, the body that I'm used to having, but it feels good in the hand. So if we take a look at the unboxing, one quick note that I'll make here is that once I decided to purchase it, I went through B&H. I was putting my order together along with some lenses. We'll talk about that in a second. But it was almost 6 p.m. and then basically the message came up that said, you know, if you complete your order by 6 p.m., you'll have it the day after tomorrow. And I took care of that. But then when I came downstairs the very next morning, all the boxes from B&H were there. You know, D had already brought them in the house because they arrived early the very next day. I can't say enough good things about B&H, and I've got a really cool B&H story for you too before we end the video. So as you see with the unboxing, another big factor in choosing the A7R5 was that I was going to take the A1 out of the equation probably anyway. The cost is too significant. I mean, you know, $6,500. And I don't know if I mentioned the megapixels between the 3, but the A1 has a sensor that'll give you 50 megapixel images, which I was happy with. Again, I'm used to 42. The A7 IV comes in at 33, I believe is what it was, right, 33 megapixels, which is great. It's a nice sweet spot. Good buddy of mine shoots the A4, loves it, is perfectly happy with that resolution, that 33 megapixel sensor. He loves it. In fact, I may bring him into this video if I can reach him. And then the A7R5 at 61, right? And we're going to talk about what 61 megapixels means to me. But those 3 were significant also in helping me choose the A7R5. It was a close call between the A7 IV and the A7R5. The A7 IV was priced handsomely. I think it's the perfect hybrid camera based on the studies that I've done. And to be fair, I've been doing this research now for about 4.5, 5 months. Right in the thick of early college baseball seasons when I realized that I was having challenges with my old camera keeping up. I liked the A7 IV a lot. And like I said, a good buddy of mine who's been a photographer for a while gets killer images out of his A7 IV. I want to see if we can reach him and see if he can give us a little bit of his thoughts on that. I'm doing this live, so.
Yo.
Hey, buddy, quick question for you.
I'm still crying, man. I'm going back and forth to the phone.
Yeah, well, I'll get with you on that. I got a buddy on the other line.
Yeah.
And we were talking about cameras, and the A4 came up, and I told him that I know a guy who shoots with the Sony A4, loves it, and gets some killer images with it. Can you give me a couple quick points that I can throw at him as to why you like that camera so much and what it, you know, what it's meant to, you know, how well you've been able to shoot?
You know, all these cameras pretty much what makes you happy with the cameras is just how it feels in your hand, how familiar you are with the menu.
Yeah.
Sony overall, I mean, I really went to the Sony, to the ecosystem, because everyone I was around was shooting Sonys. But the tracking is the best in the market.
Right. Right.
As far as the tracking part.
And you came from Canon, right?
Right.
Okay. Okay. And how long have you had the A7 for?
3 years.
3 years and running. Okay, that's what I thought. Basically what I told him was, you know, I've seen your work. I've seen some of the killer shots that you've got, and I know that once you went to that A7 IV, you never looked back. So I'm going to give him a link to that, man, and I'll hit you right back once I get off the line. Okay.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye.
Steve's been shooting for a long time. Came over from Canon. He looked to his point. He looked at multiple different Sony options and settled on the A7 IV. And here's the key: he didn't mention video because he doesn't do a lot of video with it. But during the time that I was doing this evaluation, the video on the A7 IV was ranked high all the time. I think it's better than the video on the A7R5, and the A7R5 has 8K video. But again, not why I bought the camera. So I think what he also said that you have to remember here is you got to go with what works for you, what feels good in the hand, what menu system works for you, what ecosystem, which camera ecosystem works for you, etc. And I think you can't go wrong. All of these choices are good choices based on how much money you want to spend and where you are in your photography journey, right? The single biggest point Steve talked about the subject tracking. This is also an area where I thought the A7R5 crushed the A7 IV. The Sony A7R5 has a dedicated AI processing unit, as you can see right here. What it does is it basically learns human behavior in terms of walking, motion, body language, and it can get an entire body in focus and stay on it even when that body isn't looking at the camera. And it's learning each and every time you point it at a subject, multiple subjects, but especially with people, right? So that's the image you get, and you never saw her face. Check this out. This is one of the problems I told you about that I was having. On the left, look at what the focus is trying to grab. It's grabbing what's in front of the frame on the right side. But on the right, the A7R5 is just locked. No matter what's in front, it still finds the subject because you picked that subject. And then at the end of the day, this is the image you get. Now we got some tracking. You can't see a face. You got a partial face. She's walking. She'll turn. We get a white square around the eye, and then it goes to green immediately. You get a great image. This is a great example too. On the left, focus point keeps hitting the rear right side of the car and not the driver. On the right, it doesn't see his face. You tell it that it's the head. The AI understands that that's a human head. It will follow that driver all the way. Now you got them side by side. And as you can see, the one on the right never loses focus, and that's the final image. This example here is what I was talking about in the beginning. Somebody cuts in front of you while you have focus and you lose them. That's what's on the left. On the right, it doesn't matter who walks in front of you. This camera will stay with that subject and pick him or her up wherever they left off, side by side now. Boom, there you go. And that's the beauty of it. Look at that shot. This is not a review of the A7R5 at all. There are, if not hundreds, several dozen out there, and good ones. And I've probably seen them all over the last 4 months. So not my intention to give you a review of the camera. The purpose of today's video is to let you know what I added to my kit and why I added it. Now, to the pluses and minuses, the 61 megapixel sensor is a minus for some, but is a plus for me. It's 50% more storage than I have today. Recall, I'm used to 42 megapixels per shot. I really didn't want to go back. So having 61 isn't an issue. Now, a lot of folks will say, oh, the storage, you have a storage problem. And I don't think that's really a big deal. And I'll tell you why. First and foremost, for me, I find that, let's see if I can move these over. I find that storage today is really cheap. These little guys, not very reliable, but good when you're on the road. SSD, 2 terabytes. If you don't want to go SSD, these, Seagate makes them, Western Digital makes them, expansion drives. This is 5 terabytes for under $100. Now, I don't use this for travel, and I have several of them that I have unopened, but they're great connected to your PC or your Mac. Or if you want a really sturdy portable, Samsung makes this T7 Shield SSD. This is 4 terabytes. It's also cheap. So my point is the cost of memory today is extremely lower than it used to be. The other thing I'll say is that if you have a good workflow, and we talked about this before, I may put a card up here if the opportunity allows. You just don't keep everything anymore. As an example, I used to do that. But let's say today I go out and do a photo shoot I come back with 500 images. At the end of the day, I'm going to keep 7 of those, 10 tops. So that's 490 that are going to get deleted. All right, 7 years ago, even though I was still only keeping the same number, 7 to 10, I was saving all those RAWs on the off chance that I might have to go back in or do this or do that. And over time, I've learned, primarily because of something that my son-in-law Glenn pointed out to me, the number of times that we go back in for those is rare to non-existent. And in my case, it was non-existent. Yes, 61 megapixels is a lot. And a lot of people will tell you that the number one gain or benefit of that is the fact that you can crop. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but that wasn't the number one gain for me. For me, 61 megapixels just gives me so much dynamic range. And if you do the type of editing that I do, it's important. I'll say that, meaning I do frequency separation. So I have to go into those images and I have to extract some things, right? When I'm doing my color grading and such, I'll do frequency separation on furniture, fabrics, clothing, people, etc. So having that much dynamic range lets me dial in even more so than I was doing with 42 megapixels, which is significant. Now keep in mind, I have, this is not my first, mirrorless camera. I have another Sony, 2 of them. I'm filming on an A6400, and this is my second A6400, primarily in my case for video. But it does shoot 25 megapixel photos, but I can't dial in and get into it like I can a 42 megapixel or a 61 megapixel. Now, going back to what I said about cropping, yes, I do crop, and I think it's okay to shoot for the crop. And I'm going to give you a quick example. There's a guy on YouTube that I follow, Jared Poland, FronosPhoto.com. Amazing photographer. I think what he has done and continues to do for this community is it's really good. I follow him. I like him. He's a good sports photographer. He's a good portrait guy. He takes the time to explain things. But there's one thing that Jared believes in, and this is where he and I disagree. He always says, don't crop, right? Get it in camera. And I get that. And that's easier for him to say because, he's got companies giving him 600 millimeter lenses, A9 Mark IIIs, all this super high-end pro gear. Secondly, he has on-field access to, pro Philadelphia football, baseball, soccer, to the Philadelphia 76ers. He has that access. So if I had that, I would not have to crop as much. But when you're talking to someone whose longest lens is always going to be a 70-200, there are times that, I think cropping is necessary. So much so, I will shoot for the crop. So I understand what Jared is saying. I disagree with it for most shooters, especially people like me who aren't pros. And that's where this 61 megapixels is going to come in handy. As an example, my favorite shot of 2024, right, is a shot that I ended up having to crop that I shot on a 70-200 f2.8 on my DSLR, the A99 Mark II. Check out this shot of the moon. It was, 1 or 2 in the morning. I was on the deck. Skies were clear. I mean, I could see straight through to it. I put the camera on a tripod, obviously. I got my remote control and set it up for a 2-second delay. There's some people that'll tell you want a manual focus. I did not. I used the autofocus and got the green square in the center of the moon. Took several shots and just thought, it's okay. And then when I got it on the computer and cropped it, I saw the stars surrounding the moon. I see the definition in the craters. I told the guys in my photo group, this is by far my most favorite image of this year. And here's the key. I couldn't see any of that when I got the shot. I knew I had it, framed and centered, etc. But when I say shooting for the crop, I gave myself enough space so that I could crop in. And when I did, I ended up with the shot that you just saw. And that's epic. So I say, there's no challenges. There's nothing wrong with cropping. Shoot for the crop if that's what you want to do. I'm going to continue to do that. The EVF at 9.44 million dots, I can't show you that on the camera. I've seen it when I put my eye to it, and it's noticeably different. The one minus that I have in the plus minus, and I'm just so surprised. this remote control, and I actually have two of them, this Sony remote control has been able to work with all of my Sony cameras except this new one. The camera that I'm filming on right now, you know, I mean, if I hold this up, and you may be able to get it if I zoom in, the red button controls all my video. I can do a 2-second delay on photos, or I can fire the shutter immediately. Going back to my first A99, which wasn't the Mark II, in 2012, this worked. This works for all of my APS-C Sony cameras, the A6400s, fine. It works on the A99 Mark II. But this new guy doesn't have that capability. Now, let's talk about the lens choices that I made. A couple of big decisions in the lens category. No more Zeiss glass for me. I do have a lot. I'll talk about that in a second. I'm not doing any of the adapters to go from an A mount to an E mount. Not doing that. And I'm not doing any more G Masters. So going forward in this new EDC world, everything's going to be a Sigma and a Sigma art lens specifically. And I like them. So when I bought the new camera, I bought two lenses. I'll tell you about them. This one is the DN Art 24-70 f2.8. Very nice lens. This is the first generation, right? When I talked to B&H, I was looking at the second generation. So this one came in at under $900. The second generation one is about $1,200. I got to talking with them about it, and I said, what are the differences? And primarily, the number one difference is that the new version has an aperture ring on the lens that you can lock. And, you know, I was asked how important that is to me. It's not. I don't set my aperture here. So I immediately said, let me get the original, and they told me this is our last brand new one. So if you go to B&H right now and you search this lens, it'll say no longer available. It's because I got it. I've been using it, and it's lovely. One of the challenges that I have with these lenses, both the Sigmas, images are fantastic. I'll show you some in a bit. The lens hoods don't just come off. As an example, it may be easier to do it this way. This is, you know, one of my A-mount lenses. You unscrew the lens hood, you turn it around, you screw it back on, you're there, you finish your shot, you unscrew it, you invert it, you put it back, you're done. That is the ecosystem that I grew up on. This one, not so much. So far, every one of these Sigmas that I've purchased has some type of locking mechanism on the lens hood. In this case, I have to push a button right there to twist it to get it off. And when I lock it, it stays locked. But guess what I can't do? I can't just take it off and put it back. No, no, no. I have to find the button, press it, turn it, get it off, and then put it back. That is a step that may or may not work for me. I'm going to get used to it. I mean, obviously I have to, because the price of these lenses compared to a Sony G Master 24-70 is significantly better. The other lens that I got, also a Sigma, is the 7200 f2.8. It's a big boy. Now this one, because this is the DG Art Sports version 2, the most recent one, this one does have the aperture ring on there, and you can lock it. But like I said with the 24-70, I don't use that. Getting the lens hood off of this one is more difficult than that one. It's got a knob on it. You see the knob? It's got a, can I put that there? It's got a knob on it right there. So if I want to do this one, get a cup of coffee, unscrew it. Not enough yet. Unscrew some more. There it is. Put it on there in any spot you want it. You gotta screw that bad boy back on. Great. Now we're ready to shoot. Time to get done. You can't just throw it in the bag like that. You go back to finish that cup of coffee. You gotta unscrew it. Comes off. You invert it, and then you screw it to lock it down. Right? Okay. That's, you know, taking way too long for me, but it's what I have to do in this new ecosystem. A bigger challenge that I have with this big boy, on most lenses, damn near all lenses that I've had before, when you put it on the camera, when you go to zoom, it's always the ring that's closest to you. It's the same on every lens to include the Sigma 24-70. You got two rings, you know, the zoom is on the inner and the focus ring is on the outside. For whatever reason, Sigma said, well, let's just reverse that. So to zoom, you have to get this outer ring, the ring that's closest to the front of the camera. And I can't tell you in the last month how many times I've gone to zoom with this lens and I end up taking the inner ring, which is the focus ring. And now, even though I'm setting an autofocus, I'm screwing myself up. So I have to constantly remind myself with the big 7200, go out and grab that. So I don't understand the logic in it at all. It makes absolutely no sense to me. This is the only lens that's like that. So those are the two lenses. So when I talk about my everyday carry, right, it's A7R5, Sigma 24-70 Art, Sigma 7200 Art. That's the EDC for me going forward right now. Let's talk a little bit about my old Sony DSLR, right? I did sell one, but I had two. You may recall, I had one that I bought in 2016-17, and then I'll put a card here. 2 years ago, I bought a brand new one because I just found out that Sony no longer is making A mount, and I love the camera so much, I ran out and got a brand new one. So I just unboxed it and opened it once I got the A7R5, and this is a brand new A99 Mark II, and this is what I'll be using my primes on. So the new roll for my DSLR is pretty much studio work. I've got a 50 1.4 mounted on it now, Zeiss. I also have an 85 1.4 Zeiss and a 135 1.8 Zeiss. And this is a 24-70. So with the DSLR now, I have the 24-70 and 3 primes, and primarily those will be used for studio work. So one thing I'll show you right now, this shot that I'm putting on the screen is picture D. It's the first shot of the new A99 Mark II that I've taken. So fun fact, since 2004, I think, every camera that I've bought, the first picture I always take is of D. And I have one that I'll show you in a moment that was the first picture I took of her with the new A7R5. I had an older A99 Mark II. I'm not sponsored by KEH, but it was one of the easiest and simplest processes I ever had to do. So basically, as you can see, you know, you go online, you fill out the form, you fill out the online form, what it is, make, model, condition, etc. And immediately you get a initial quote. I'll tell you what that was for me in just a second. Once you get the quote, you can print that off. And when you print it off, as you see, they will also give you shipping labels, FedEx shipping labels. So I got one quote for the A99 Mark II. I got another quote for the lens. You take all that stuff, you go to FedEx, you bring it there, they ship it, it goes to KEH, right? Okay. A couple days later, you get an email that says, okay, based on the preliminary that we gave you, this is what we're really going to offer you because now we've had a chance to test out your gear. The initial quote that I first got for the camera was $1,031, right? So 8 years ago, I paid $2,700. They're offering $1,031. And I'm going to show you this too. Before I shipped it out, I took a look at how many shots I got. We talked about shutter actuations earlier. So in the 7.5 years that I've had the camera, I've taken 70,315 images, recalling that it's guaranteed for 300,000 or more. In all that time, as much as I shoot, I didn't get to 1/3 of what the capacity of that camera was. So they offered initially $1,031, and then the email came and it said, we'll offer you $1,031, which means they hit the max that they can give me on that camera. The lens, 10 years old, fairly worn, beat to death. The quote that I got was, I want to say $395, I believe. It was very low. Yes. And then when they came back after they looked at it, they said, we'll offer you $257 instead of $395. So $1,031 for the camera, $257. And you have choices. If you say no at that point, they will ship it back to you at no cost to you. I said yes. And then they say, how do you want to get paid? PayPal or check? I don't know what PayPal's doing. They go through some stuff now, and if you sell anything, they try to get a piece of it, and then they also want to make sure that it gets taxed. I took the check. The 2 checks came, real simple. We were good to go. I got them, and we were there. Here's what I paid for the gear. The A7R5 I got from B&H used 10, right? So they got a 1 to 10, 10 is like new. I called them and I called this particular camera out. Why is this a 10 and why do you have it there? And they looked up the history. Somebody bought it, returned it within 30 days. And I wanted to know, I asked them, how many times has the shutter been fired? They didn't know because it wasn't in the store, it was in the warehouse. So when it came, first thing I did was take a shot. As you can see here, just like with the other camera, my first shot's always a picture of D. Got that shot, and then I immediately took the card, put it in my computer to see where the shutter count was. And it was a whopping 1,476 shots after I took the one picture, which means that someone didn't even spend a memory card, because right now I'm getting 1,650, almost 1,700 images on a card. That new, like new, used cost me 3,500 bucks. So I paid $3,500 for the camera. New was $3,900, right? But this is where it gets interesting. And I said I was going to tell you something cool about B&H. When I went back just recently, last week, to start double checking my numbers, and you can see here, I mean, I have them all here to make sure that the information I'm providing you is as accurate as it can be. The prices went down on everything. So now the 3,900 A7R5 brand new, which was 3,900, it's 3,400. It dropped $500, which means it was $100 less than what I paid for a like new used. Interesting. So all I do, I go into my email, I send a quick blurb to B&H. I've done this in the past, and they looked at it and they said, "You're 100% right." You know, because I thought, okay, do I have to send this one back, get the refund, then buy new? And you know, and I was willing to do that because it was a significant enough, you know, difference in the price. And they said, no, we're going to issue you a refund. And sure enough, they issued me a refund of $484. So I paid $35. They gave me a refund of $484, which brought the cost of my camera down to $3,016, right? So my total outlay for the camera, if you take that $3,016 and you subtract the $1,031 that I got for the old camera, I paid $1,985 for a brand new A7R5. Not bad. I'm going to show you a couple of sample shots that I got. I walked around and got some local shots when I first got the camera a month ago. And then a few weeks ago, I went on a golf trip with some friends. And this was the only kit that I took was a new everyday carry, and we got some shots up with that. Big thanks to LB who was there, and he helped me. He didn't know he was helping do a camera review, but I wanted to see how easy it was for someone who's not a Sony shooter to get some shots up. And the only thing that he had to say when I gave him the camera to get some shots was, "I don't know if this is happening because it's not making any noise," which was great because I had already configured the camera to do silent shutter just to see how that worked. I said I was going to talk a little bit about video, and it's an amazing video camera. Does 8K and a bunch of other stuff, means absolutely nothing to me. For the type of video that I do, the A6400 is priced so much better. It gives me exactly what I want. It doesn't run out. It'll go as long as the battery goes. If you try and do 8K on the A7R5, you have a 29-30 minute limit along with some other limitations. It doesn't matter. But again, an EDC should be able to do what you need. So if you take a look here, if you look at the B-roll, I actually used the A7R5 to film one episode of our podcast, 15 good minutes. I used the camera, no issues, set it up for 4K. And here's what the final footage looked like. They call them villas.
They call them villas.
So like right now he's at, see, I think that's rather crispy. So again, I didn't have to take one of the A6400s. My EDC captured great 4K video, 4K 30, enough for me to process, edit there at the resort, get it uploaded to YouTube and everything from there. So I know now that when I'm out in the field, if I have to get some video, I can do it with this A7R5. Last thing I want to talk about, battery and memory card. The battery is big, like the one from my A99 Mark II, which is great. Seems to run just as long. That's really important to me because the batteries on the smaller APS-C cameras, they don't last very long at all. I'm always changing those out. I did have to change memory cards. I stayed with the SanDisk Extreme Pro, but I had to move up in 2 categories. One, had to go to 128 gig as opposed to a 64 because the files are bigger. And 2, I needed a faster card, not necessarily faster writing to the computer. Faster when you take the shot, the buffered shot, and getting from the shot into the card. From a V30 to a V90. The combination of that, and the last piece of that equation is I needed to have a write speed above 200 megabytes a second. All my old 64s were coming in at 90. Again, writing to the card. These new cards, these XDSCs, will write at 260 megabytes a second, which is fine for the camera, even when I'm doing burst shooting for some type of sports. So again, that's it. Long video. At the end of the day, I'm really glad that I got the camera when I did. I've gone through and have changed most of the settings. I've got my custom buttons configured, and I've just been going out and getting some shots up as I've shown you here. What I'm going to do now, since you stuck around, is I was able to get in studio and test this, and I didn't think I would be in time. So I was able to go in last weekend. Into the studio, spent a couple hours doing some test shots, some natural light shots, some shots with the trigger and the strobes. So here's a little BTS of that. Big shout out to Taina Masonette for coming and helping me on such short notice. She did a great job crushing it. I will put her information in the description below. So again, my new EDC is a Sony A7RV with a 24-70 Sigma and a 7200 Sigma. Enjoy the BTS. I'll have a couple of the final shots from that BTS right behind it. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Like I said in the beginning, I hope you guys are getting some great shots. I hope you have had an amazing summer. We'll talk to you soon. Bye now.